And I can just hear people in the background saying that I'm an idiot for these ones. But ads boosted through the Instagram app. I have seen some sick performance from brands boosting inside of the Instagram app. And the performance marketer, the master of business manager inside me thinks, that's so stupid. But I've seen it work time and time again. Today's episode of eCommentary is something a little bit special. I have brought in two of the guys from our team who might not be aware of it, but could potentially be standing in for me when I go on my maternity leave recording the podcast. So it is a working trial. I have both Oliver and Jacob. They both sit on our paid social team, and we're going to be getting into the ins and outs of what we're seeing in paid social advertising. I've got some teasers up my sleeve that are going to test these guys and their knowledge. So I'm going to put you on the spot. And we just have a good chat about the world of paid social. Oli, Jacob, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us here.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Very much. It's news to me that we're filling in for you. We might go for a name change, but yeah, let's see how we go.
Yeah.
E-commerce with eCommentary with Oliver and Jacob sounds pretty good.
A bit long, maybe.
Yeah, a little bit long. O and J, I don't know. We can work with the working title.
O and J do ecom.
Yeah, there we go. It's a little bit modern.
See, I'll just send you my invoice in the post. So let's get into it, guys. You are on a lot of our client accounts in the day-to-day, and there's a lot of noise out there, Twitter, LinkedIn, about different strategies that people should apply to their paid social accounts. But I want to know from the horse's mouths, what is working in your ad accounts at the moment?
I think you can look at it at very different ways. So in terms of my setup, I can see that taking over a new client, a very structured approach works super well. So I basically cut away the fluff, which means that optimizing for each funnel stage and following the line down the funnel, both in terms of messaging and creatives, works super well. I think another important point is, I think creative-wise, some of my clients sometimes ask me what's working well in general in terms of creatives, right? And I think it really varies from account to account. And because of our various tests, we can see what works in every account. But it's pretty hard to say, okay, carousels or videos are doing super well top of funnel across multiple accounts because the different audiences, they're different places in the journey. But I can definitely tell that seasonality, both in messaging, but also in creatives, works super well because it speaks to the customer. And I think to me, the perfect ad is when you fill the customer's needs, or at least you poke their interests based on something that happens right now. So yeah, that's definitely something that's working super well.
Yeah, I totally echo that. I reckon most of what you're saying, I'm feeling the same way. I think the biggest thing for me this month has been a bit of return to performance, or watching closely by the start of the month, with everyone being very worried about Q1 this year. I think the return to performance has been really cool, or really fun to watch, that the consumer sentiment's pretty low. We're still able to move the needle with optimization on the accounts, but yeah, I feel exactly the same way in terms of the structured approach. That seems to be working really well, even though some of the tactics are quite maybe against best practice. It feels as though that's what's moving the needle the most.
Yeah, I totally agree. And also, back to what you were saying, Andy, about what people are saying on LinkedIn and TikTok and all that, it seems like a lot of the experts are holding on to this automation thing, which we see so much more of probably this year. I think it's interesting because we always test out different things, especially top of funnel with audiences, all that. And what's interesting is in January, interest audiences have done super well for a long period of time now, but actually lookalikes also do super well, which I think is very against what Meta wants you to do. So even though we have this whole automation and this whole talk about which direction we're going with automation and automation having a bigger impact, I think it's remarkable that some of these more old school tactics, they still work pretty well.
Yeah, I remember when you told me that you were running lookalikes, because I hadn't run a lookalike for probably 6 to 8 months. And then I said, oh, what's working well in your accounts? And you're saying going back to 2% lookalikes is a solid winner. And I was shocked by that. That's something that I'd written off with iOS 14, was that pixel tracking killed the lookalikes. But then I think the thing that I liked about that approach was that you're not just taking things for gospel. And if we'd tested maybe April 2021, 2022, something, we don't write it off. You actually go back and test it. And there's been a lot of talk about, oh, you only need to run open audiences. Open audiences are all you need to do with an ad account. But actually, we're seeing things a little bit different. Now, I wanted to dig into something that both of you mentioned, and that was about seasonality of campaign performance and seasonality of spend, because it does play a huge role in paid social performance. You can't just expect that everything runs at the same level month in, month out, that performance does go up and down. What are you guys looking at to track seasonality within campaign?
Like, for me, the biggest two, I guess three, I would be looking at firstly the year, but I can't think of a client that seasonality doesn't affect, that I've worked with personally, and how I'm always taking it into consideration, just as you said. But I reckon if they've got a full year's worth of data, last year's data, straight away, that's where I'll first look and ask the client, what did you change? Obviously have a look at spend as well. And if they had prolonged periods where they decided they were going to not spend on advertising, that's obviously going to have a big effect on their sales data the year before. Then I'd go competitors. I'd look at the competitors for the last year and see what they've done, how much advertising they've run. And then I'd go trends or some other third-party tool that we could use to track share of search or search volume over the year in that particular vertical.
Yeah, those were very good points, Oli. My points as well.
All your points.
I think you're leading in terms of being the new host right now.
Yeah, but let's give away some insider secrets. I think one of the best tools that we use for trend monitoring is Glimpse, the Chrome extension that sits on top of Google Trends. Now, if you've not used Glimpse before, there's a free trial. I think you get 10 searches a month, but we use it so much that we took out a paid plan. And what it actually tells you is how different trends are affected month on month. So you can see and you can receive notifications that I saw a really bizarre one that rain jackets was actually trending down in the last week. And I'm looking outside thinking, what's going on there? You should be buying your rain jackets, but maybe because it's rained so much here that everybody's already bought all of their...
They did that back in autumn.
Exactly.
Yeah, but this is an incredible tool and it's really good for visualizing performance. And then when you start to stack sales data alongside the trends data, it's crazy. I know with one of your accounts, Oli, we almost see direct correlation between when wedding season starts and when their business peaks for the year. So that's a great tool to add to your wheelhouse. And what are you seeing in terms of ad account performance? What's driving performance forward more at the moment? Is it targeting or is it creative? I know you mentioned that you're both using interests or lookalikes, but how does that stack up against creative?
So I think to me, creative would always win. Going back to what I mentioned earlier about this whole automation, I believe that the algorithm is getting so much better at picking up and picking out the right people in an audience, whether it's interest audience or broad. So my guess would be that potential customers on social media are being targeted with very more specific ads, all the way down to what they're interested in and what they're most likely to buy to 5-10 years ago. So if you're a potential customer and you're scrolling through your feed, you see so many ads that's going to target you the way you actually want it to be. So I think these days it takes so much more for a creative to actually make this potential client click through and look at your website, because all of them, I don't want to say they look the same, but I think it's super important that you stand out, because more than ever, people are just scrolling in their Facebook feed. They're not looking to make a purchase. It's my experience, at least. So you really need to make sure they stop and first of all, look at your creative, but also your copy, because your product could potentially be 10 out of 10 and you have a super sustainable product or whatever, a solid brand, and your vision might be doing all the right things. But if people don't know about this, which comes through your creative and your messaging, you might be super, super good at targeting the right people. But if they're not interested in what they see through your creative, then it doesn't really matter. So to me, it's creative all the way.
Yeah, I'm really feeling the same way. I think that maybe contrary to what the belief was, 5 years ago, when interest targeting was maybe the biggest kind of blow up, especially Facebook, and being able to be so targeted that you can get down to the nitty gritty granular what someone's interested in. I'm targeting Jane who likes dogs and is 56 and a half.
Yeah.
I think that, we know now that scalability needs broad. If you want to be able to scale a campaign, if we're talking down to tactics in platform, it needs to be a broad enough audience. So starting with that, your interests all of a sudden, I feel like once you've given the smell of the rag to the algorithm and you prove scalability, then it's creative all the way. And testing that, there is almost like we've talked about it recently, like there's so many things you can be doing. And anyone says that they've extended the arm to a full length of what creative tests are available is telling you lies.
Yeah.
Because there's always more things you can test in messaging and creative to position what you're doing. Like even recently for a campaign for a client that we've seen pretty slow top of funnel performance on cold audiences, we just reworked our messaging to go from product to value to problem, product, value in their messaging structure.
I think one of the things that I've been really curious about is approaches to creative, because I agree with you both wholeheartedly that creative is one of the biggest levers you can pull at the moment in platform. But I think there's also this danger that people think that it's just about loading up 20, 30, 40, 50 pieces of creative into an ad account and then, this one worked the best. But I think that carries some dangers to the overall brand and the longevity of the brand. So sure, put content in that you think is representative of your brand and your brand values, but you shouldn't just be throwing in that influencer that said nice things about your brand just because they did and you want to test it as an angle. There should always be a wider thought about the bigger brand play, because if you constantly rely on the algorithm picking a piece of content and it doesn't represent your company, when you stop running those adverts, what's left of your business? Who's going to remember you when that very ugly direct response ad finished? What's going to be the lasting memory of your brand? And there's been a Danish shoe brand that I've looked a lot at their ads, and I know that the guys at Confect have various thoughts on whether logos should be in an ad, but this brand, they didn't run their logo in any of the ads. Of course, they've got a distinctive asset on their shoe, but I only know it as a marketer. I don't know if I'd remember it. If I wasn't a marketer, I wouldn't remember who the brand was. So yes, it might convert on that first touch point. I don't know what their data is. I have a thought that if you're running open catalog campaigns or something like that where the logo doesn't feature, maybe that skews their data pool. But for me, having those marketing fundamentals of having a distinctive asset in your creative helps the longevity of your brand. What's your thoughts on
this?
this?
For sure, yeah. And I think it also goes back to what we talked about earlier. But I think it's super important not only thinking like targeting and creatives in terms of conversions here and now. I've heard of brands that are in a internal fight because one department really wants to push new creatives and keep refreshing this brand style and how people perceive the brand. But at the other hand, you have a team who's in charge of performance, and they see super solid performance from ads that might be, 2 years old. So the logo might not even be the same, or during autumn, they're running a spring ad or something like that because the algorithm picked up on it and it still performs well. So you also really need to take into account, okay, why am I running these ads? Is it because I want conversions here now, or is it because in a month or in a year, this customer is going to think of my brand in a certain way because this is how we presented the brand. So I reckon it's super hard to find a middle way between those two, but I think it's super important to take into account. So you're not only focusing on, okay, can we get a ROAS 4 on our top of funnel, because that's going to look super nice. Yeah. You have to think a few months and even years ahead.
For sure. I think it's like a drug. I feel like data for many, especially that are new, maybe they started an e-commerce and they're seeing great numbers, conversions are going well, they see a dip and then they start to worry and then they start to change things up and throw basically anything at it, but you're just throwing things at something rather than actually having a plan. I totally agree. I think it's a real shame because I think that, for many of these companies, they're selling a quality product, but someone needs to tell them that what you show your customer today or your non-customer who is a category buyer but not entered the market yet, they're thinking about when they're maybe buying 6 months down the road, right? We know that. So what are they going to think of you if you're just pulling in, using that data and then just, like you said, using an automat ad in spring? What does it say about you? It's like that wider communication strategy that I think that a lot of companies can really benefit from. And I really enjoy working with companies that want to listen to it. I don't blame anyone for necessarily missing it out, but I think it's a really important point.
For sure, and especially when so many people are talking about like how big of a percentage in the market are actually ready to buy a product right now. It might come down to, 2-5%.
Yeah.
So what about the other
95%?
Exactly. Like, what are they going to think of your brand? But I totally agree on that one.
Totally. It's a long game. And unfortunately, Facebook is built in a way, especially Facebook and Google, and a lot of digital media is built in a way that measures the here, the now, I can refresh my data every second and see who's clicked through and who's on the website. Even Shopify, for instance, live viewers and who's got how many customers have items in their cart and everything. It's a drug. It's like you can get really hooked on seeing that data and wanting to react suddenly and show the right ad in front of that person. But the reality is that person probably heard about your brand much before making that buying decision.
But it feels a lot at the moment that people have learnt performance but forgot marketing, so that all the motives are the short-term performance. And that's almost, in a time where we've had economic prosperity, we've had some good years. We've had some really good years.
Sure.
So that this performance approach will carry you through the good years because people have that surplus income where they can afford to purchase. But now when things start to get a little bit tighter, that pair of sneakers, to go back to my previous example, you might have had enough cash in the bank at the end of the month to buy it for the last 4 or 5 years. But now where energy bills are going up, the price of food is going up, all of a sudden that purchase I could have made month end is now taking me 60 days. And that's where performance marketing wasn't really designed for those 60-day attribution cycles. So that method's less effective in some cases. So you've got to think about those bigger marketing plays and go back to Field and Burnett and go back, even the work that System 1 are doing in terms of how they're looking at marketing effectiveness and how they're looking at creating emotion within your ads.
Yeah.
You've got to go back to these principles. They are there. Forget the guru on YouTube and go back to the marketing science for how to make sure that you're running your brand the right way in the current landscape, and then keep doing it when we return to the prosperous times.
And that doesn't mean forget metrics and forget measurement and forget performance. Performance still has a place. Yeah. Like, we'd be out of business if performance didn't have a place, right? Like, it's still really important that, and no one's saying to take money completely away from your performance budget. It's just within every decision that happens, we need to have that brand and the long play in mind.
So, speaking of pure performance, advantage shopping campaigns.
Yeah. You've just been talking a lot about automation. I feel like you've got a spicy opinion about this.
I probably do, yeah. I actually did an Advantage Plus campaign for a client. We did it for 10, 11 days, probably spent £500 in the US as well. So it was a very big market. So basically do what all the experts are saying, letting everything up to the algorithm. I think we feeded it with 8 to 10 different ads. So I think what's good about the Advantage Plus is, in their own words, you're leaving more up to the algorithm. And like we talked about earlier on, the algorithm is getting better and better at figuring out who to target, right? So in theory, that should improve performance and figure out who to target for more conversions and potentially a lower CPA. What I saw was actually a ROAS below 1 over 10 days. So I think for a couple of reasons, I'm not a super huge fan of Advantage Plus. One, like we talked about with creatives, Advantage Plus is likely to skew the setup of your creatives. So placing the headline at the top of the image, for instance, like you don't really have the same control of how your ads are being represented. But also I think like you're going in the way that Meta wants you to do. And I think it's hard. So we actually set I think it was 10% of the marketing spend every day to advertise to retention audience, which is fine. And it's super nice that you can actually control how big of a percentage goes to retention, because otherwise you have no control. And then when we started to see conversions, we actually couldn't break down whether it was the retention audience or the prospecting audience.
Yeah.
So you actually had no clue how many of those people knew about the brand and potentially bought from the brand before.
Yeah.
So I think it lacks clarity. It lacks that overview you can get from what I mentioned earlier, like breaking it down in every funnel stage.
Yeah, totally. Just in that, like, you wouldn't necessarily, like, that helps us understand breaking it down between retention and what performance you're seeing from a retention audience to a new customer audience. That helps us decide how efficient the platform's being, right? And I think maybe it could be, if it probably is a little bit of a strategic move from when more companies are looking at new customer acquisition as a really kind of North Star. I think that maybe it is, but I think I'm with you. Like, I believe that a streamlined campaign structure is probably the way to go for many verticals. The more simplified, the less wasted spend, because the algorithm knows where to put it. It's like going into bids, right? But yeah, I had the same issue with the Advantage Plus. I didn't see the same kind of performance that everyone else has been spruiking, saying that it's the new kind of answer to your e-commerce dreams. But that doesn't mean that I think tested it with, I saw bad results, I turned it off, and I would be, if there was a client that I thought that it would fit, it would probably be one with many products that was e-commerce only, and that had a powerful set of creative assets that they could put in there. And I think it needs that variety. That's my hypothesis now, that I think it needs a variety, but I'd only test it. I wouldn't just put it on and forget. I think it would definitely be subject to pretty strong criticism.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know this for sure, but it's just a thought. So Meta wants you to optimize for Advantage Plus campaigns. So my hypothesis is that they might favor these campaigns, which means that they might not, like the opposite of that, take some marketing space away from, for instance, interested targeting or lookalikes, which might skew and probably drive up CPM and CPA, for instance. Not only are they launching this new campaign style where you really want to look into whether it's worth it, but at the same time, it might mess up the way you usually do it.
Yeah.
So it seems like it's taking over like control of how to advertise.
I really don't like that it messes with your creative.
Yeah.
That, even though that it's optimizing in that way, the marketer in me doesn't like the idea that my ads are going to be shown in ways that I don't understand or I didn't design them to.
Exactly.
Right? That's my biggest gripe with it, I think. You share.
So one area that I'm really tempted to test with Advantage Shopping is to flip it on its head. Like, a lot of people are using it as an acquisition tool. I want to see how good it actually is with retention. So again, load up your lists into it. Screw up the budget from only going to 5 or 10 or 20% and pushing it right the other way and seeing how Advantage Shopping campaigns actually perform on retention audiences.
That's interesting. I think it definitely requires a big audience, but at the same time, it'll be cool to see, because a lot of our clients don't really do retention that much because they're super into customer acquisition. At least on multiple of my clients, they run a very small budget to retention audiences, which means that we usually see a like ROAS 20 because we don't spend more than £10 a day. So I reckon it'd be super interesting seeing, can we actually hit that same ROAS and see if it somehow, through very mysterious ways of tweaking the ads, if they'll perform better.
Yeah, I think that's going to be really interesting as well, what the CPM does, because retention audiences always have high CPMs. They're an expensive audience to be hitting. And Advantage Plus that's meant to be a key performer for Advantage Plus, or a choice to make, is because of the low CPMs. So yeah, big audience. I'd be keen to see for sure.
But I still feel that I've got unfinished business with Advantage Plus shopping, and I don't know if it's just bullshit on social media that's keeping this drive through. Like I've seen it work, but I've never seen it work as good as people on Twitter and LinkedIn are saying. I'm like, what are your products? Yeah. What are your budgets? Yeah. How long have you been running it? What's the optimizations? Because from what I've seen, it's okay, but I feel like we do a better job.
Yeah, for sure. It seems like it's a lazy version of doing paid social, right?
Yeah. But I feel like you'd almost get better results just doing a CBO and just not excluding. Put everything into one campaign and don't exclude your retention and retargeting audiences and leave it up to the algorithm. I've seen good results with that in the past with other clients, like better results than I saw with Advantage Plus.
So I promised you both some left field questions.
Oh, they weren't already questions?
Okay. Most unusual things you've seen that aren't supposed to work, but work really well in an ad account.
I don't know if it's super unusual, but right now and for the last month, we've been playing around with a lot of creative tests for multiple clients. So we've played around with these GIFs where it fires up all the ingredients in it and what's really good about these healthy products. I guess, of course, there's a difference between what I think is looking super nice and what actually performs well, but we played around with the CTA at the very end, so it had a smooth, very slick end to it. And then we also just tried out one without an ending. So it just stopped right after it listed the last ingredient. And that actually outperformed 2 or 3 of to me, very slick endings, very slick CTAs. Yeah, to me, it seemed like it was an unfinished GIF, but it turned out to be outperforming the other 3 ads over a period of 2 weeks with a decent amount of spend. Yeah, lesson learned. I kind of always predict what's working well.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've thought about this a fair bit, where the whole marketer's bias thing, like you are not the target market, and also you are in marketing, so you have a particular bias of what you think should work and shouldn't work.
I've got 2. And I can just hear people in the background saying that I'm an idiot for these ones. But ads boosted through the Instagram app. I have seen some sick performance from brands boosting inside of the Instagram app. And the performance marketer, the master of business manager inside me thinks, that's so stupid. But I've seen it work time and time again. And I'm so much so I'm like, should we be doing this a bit more? Yeah. It's crazy. Have you guys ever tried it?
Do you mean click that boost button?
That boost button inside the Instagram app. I've seen sick ROAS when you do it.
Yeah. I mean, I've only done it through Ads Manager. I've never boosted through in-app, but yeah, it's no doubt annoying.
Yeah.
It makes you feel like you're sitting there all day.
I think we need to add some context to what actually happens with those boosted posts.
Please do.
So
go on.
I think, first of all, there's no exclusions that go into those boosted posts. So potentially it is taking the low-hanging fruit of retention. Those that are close to buying, it shows it, you get the view attribution, and it goes over the line. But still generates some pretty good numbers in the platform. And the next one that I'm a fan of, reach and brand awareness for retention audiences.
For retention?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Again, with flighted campaigns or with latest releases, product launches, why pay 5 or 6 times the CPM of a conversion campaign when you can run a reach campaign to people you already know are interested for a fraction of the cost and try it? I guarantee you're going to see some amazing cost per conversions and some strong ROAS. I've been playing around with this one for 4 to 6 months now. Time again, I'm so surprised that it works, to the point where I actually think, like, why am I spending so much on a conversion?
When you say it like that, it makes perfect sense, because it's not a different audience you're targeting. It's just maybe a slightly different way. As you mentioned yourself, it's an audience who's super hot. They already purchased, might be eager to do it again. Yeah, why wouldn't it work? It seems so simple when you say that it works, because yeah, why not?
I guess the argument would be that the CPM would be, because you'd have to hit, because it's not optimizing to those that are ready to purchase now and optimizing to basically getting everyone. The argument is that you have to make more poor decisions, as in the bids, in terms of, but like the chances, because the CPM is so low on those reach campaigns, the chances that you're going to go over the whatever, maybe 10, 20 pound CPM that you are on your conversion campaigns, the chances that you're over that are very slim. I'd be keen to try it. You've also got a frequency cap.
Yeah, and granted, again, there's, if I call it attribution theft, you can get where I'm coming from, that if you're running a reach campaign to a retention audience, so you hit everybody with it because it's costing you, I don't know, 3-4 euros as opposed to 20-25 euros, that within that you're going to hit some people that would have bought anyway, given. But it's still performing well, and you can't have that insight of, oh, X would have bought anyway. And this really leads me on to my next question, and this is the question that I'm so excited to ask, because it's going to make you guys think. If Facebook took away conversion campaigns tomorrow, so you can no longer use any of the sales options, so any of the sale campaign options, what would you do in an ad account?
First of all, I would probably do this thing I've heard of, where I would do reach to retention audiences.
Yeah.
I really pulled it off, so I might be going with that.
That must have been pretty smart.
Yeah, I'm really lucky. I think besides that, I'd probably take more of an omni-channel strategy. So using my Facebook ad account as a sort of a lead generator, in the way that it's very top of funnel oriented, brand messaging, all that. So collect them all. Obviously, a few people are still going to buy, but it's more of a lead generation, where you then use other channels like Google, for instance, to then seal the deals in a way. So probably change the scope a bit from being not super salesy, but less conversion oriented and more broader targeting, very soft and introductive in the way you communicate with people. And then, close the deal with other platforms. That's one way of doing it.
Oli, you look deep in thought.
Yeah, I think there's a couple.
It's right up your alley.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's a really good question. I think, firstly, my mind went to exactly what you were saying. Use it as a lead generation platform, have killer flows, and basically be great at your email marketing and nurture those sales that way. But that is omni-channel. That isn't in-platform. So it is a really difficult question. Many would probably just say run traffic, but I think that is trash. No, I don't think it's trash. I think that it's pretty hard to just expect the same results from a traffic campaign, moving the budget over. Click to Messenger, a new one that I haven't tested yet, but that you can use. Speaking to a meta rep about it, you can use basically unique promo codes in the chat function. So you basically, customer clicks on the ad, Messenger pops up, they get a unique promo code, and then they can use that on the website. Okay. That way you can track the actual conversions that are coming through, because you're using unique promo codes. I think you can only use the unique ones on Facebook, and Messenger actually has non-unique. But still, regardless, you can track the actual conversions coming through, and you can use, it's optimizing to them, to people who are in the market because they're clicking on looking for a promo code, right? So that was a new one that I only found out about very recently that I thought was an interesting one worth testing opposed to conversion campaigns. I don't know if that class is a conversion campaign, but I'm going to say it doesn't because that works to my advantage.
It's very conversion focused, at least. But I mean, you hacked the system,
right? Yeah,
I'll approve it.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
Some interesting answers there.
Yeah, but it's a complicated one. Andy, what would you do? Tell me.
Good question. I think I would run the same content that we run now. I wouldn't change any content. And I would look to leverage reach. I would look to leverage video views. I'd probably put some traffic in there. And my whole approach would be that if I show the right ads to the right people and enough of the right people, I don't know if I'd see a tremendous drop in sales. I would expect a short-term drop in terms of immediate ROAS. But actually, in terms of the brand growth over time, as long as we believe that Facebook aren't just going to set fire to our money when we really do this, I think that we'd still get a really positive outcome. I think that it would just take our focus away from CAC and ROAS in platform. I think the other thing that I would really maximize is brand partnerships and whitelisting. So can I find relevant influencers with audiences? And again, we have to believe that their audiences are credible and not overhyped. I'll talk about that another day. But then retargeting their followers or their engagers and almost using that as a way to piggyback on targeting. But I honestly believe that if your creative's right, your messaging's right, and your targeting is right, I think you still see really good performance just running what you're running, but just changing your objective.
Yeah.
So when you're saying performance, do you mean Facebook performance or do you mean like in Shopify, for instance?
Yeah, I mean looking at things like MER over the long term.
Yeah.
So I think if you look at it 30 days, you're probably going to turn your ad campaigns off. But I think that if you were to commit to that strategy for 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, I don't know if you'd see such a dip. I think that possibly you may be able to reduce your marketing spend and actually see similar performance.
Maybe we should be doing this.
I think it really comes down to the brand, but also I think I agree with traffic being probably an obvious one I want to try out as well. I think obviously they're going to end on the website anyway through a conversions campaign, but I think it requires a really strong website. So you definitely need to look into how to optimize your conversion rate because not that many people going through ads would be likely to purchase, but you can definitely maximize some of it looking into testing landing pages and all that and really trying to up your conversion rate in that way.
Bump up your CRO.
Yeah.
I really like the idea of using video views, and I think maybe you both will know that I'm a bit of a preacher for video views. I think because if the client has good enough content or if the content is good enough, the retargeting on that engagement, I think is such an underrated tool. Being able to retarget on 75% of a video view, I think that's really nice to me. Using that audience in a traffic campaign.
But also thinking outside of the box, if you're running, say, your traffic campaigns, you can still track, say, time on site by the UTM parameters in analytics and use that as a benchmark for success. So which traffic audience do I get the most time on site for? Because the objection that you always get whenever you suggest traffic to anybody is, oh, they just send me people that will click to the website and bounce, click and bounce. And it's probably quite true. But if you can find those traffic audiences that will give you higher time on site, and then you start to retarget those with video content. Use that UTM parameter to retarget based on the one that gives you highest time on site. Yeah. I think that you could develop a strategy that allows you to nurture customers more efficiently and more cost effective than necessarily the straight conversion top, remarketing, conversion retention approach. I think that maybe you'd learn something, but again, they're not going to take it away anytime soon because it's where 95% of advertisers spend their budget. But if it does, it does sound like we're super, super prepared for what will come. And for some of us that really love that brand building use of paid media, it would almost be a dream come true in terms of getting us the leeway. But gents, it's been such a pleasure to hear your thoughts and your wisdom. I think you shared some wicked points that people could really implement in their ad accounts. Thanks so much for coming on. Thanks so much for sharing. And yeah, if you want to work with some media buyers that definitely know their stuff, then hit us up. I'll be on maternity leave, but it sounds like we got some smart minds that are going to hold the fort while I'm gone.
You'll be in good hands.
Yeah. Thanks for having us. I'm looking forward to see which one of us would be the host while you're gone.
Yeah.
But we'll take that internally and then we'll communicate something when we know more in that case.